Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. My name is Matt Young. I'm the Director of Cultural Affairs for the City of Lake Charles, and I'm just really pleased to welcome you to this breakout session on local incentives. It's a great time to launch a business in Lake Charles and in our metropolitan area. For this session, we have local officials and representatives from the City of Lake Charles, as well as the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury, available to highlight several of our local incentives. We hope that you walk away from today's session with some ideas on how to bring resources and partners to the table that will make your economic or housing development opportunity work right here in Southwest Louisiana. And so just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. I am going to ask you to silence your cell phones, please, at this time, just to avoid any unnecessary interruptions. We're also going to have a couple of presentations by our members, and at the conclusion of that, we'll have an opportunity to ask some questions of them. We have left several index cards at the center of each of your tables. If you'll just jot that question down for us, I'll be walking around throughout the session and taking those from you. We are also accepting questions on our Facebook live stream, and Ms. Taylor is going to help me field those and send those to us, so we'll be taking questions from the audience online as well. So let's dive right into the meat and potatoes of this breakout session. Today we'll be hearing from a few subject matter experts that are extremely familiar with local incentives in Calcasieu Parish. I'm pleased to introduce the following panel members to you, and then we'll call each of them up one by one to get started. First, we have Tarek Polite. He's the Director of Human Services, and he just told me that he started with the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury 28 years ago, when he was 12 years old. Also, we have Mayor Nick Hunter, my boss, the mayor of the City of Lake Charles, and also Mark Tizano, who's Director of Community Planning and Development for the City of Lake Charles. And so without further ado, I'm going to ask Tarek to take the mic.
All right. Thank you, Matt, and good morning to everyone. As Matt said, my name is Tarek Polite. I'm Director of Human Services for the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury, and I did start with the parish in 1992, 28 years ago, and I was 12 years old. Back then, there were not major child labor laws, and so the police jury was not concerned about that at that particular time. Among my responsibilities as Director of Human Services is that I coordinate community service programs, transportation, workforce development, and of course the big topic here in the room today, housing. I began my career as Section 8 coordinator with the police jury, coordinating the Section 8 program, and have worked all of those years in subsidized housing, fair housing, and affordable housing. And so today I'm going to be talking about a subject that many of you are probably familiar with. I've already had some of the developers to come up and to ask me whether or not we're going to be providing some vouchers for developers. And the short answer to that question is yes. But for those of you who are in the room who may not be familiar with project-based vouchers, I will go through the presentation with you on this morning. So the big question is, what are project-based vouchers? Well, project-based vouchers are an aspect of the Section 8 program that we in the housing industry really don't talk that much about because most of the times we're focused upon providing tenant-based assistance. But the truth of the matter is that Section 8 assistance can be either tenant-based or project-based. And so when it's tenant-based, that means that the assistance follows the tenant or the family. When the assistance is project-based, okay, the assistance is attached to a structure or to housing, okay? So next slide, if it's available. So let's talk about some of the general characteristics of the PBV program. So if a public housing agency already operates a tenant-based program under its annual contribution contract, the PHA has discretion to operate a project-based voucher program. So currently there are 4 housing authorities in the Calcasieu Parish that operate tenant-based vouchers. They are Lake Charles Housing Authority, Calcasieu Parish Housing Authority, which is my agency, the Sulphur Housing Authority, and Vinton Housing Authority. To date, the Calcasieu Parish Housing Authority as well as the Lake Charles Housing Authority have elected to operate project-based programs. The good news about this is for those developers who may be wondering about funding, how does this work? Since it's already part of our annual contribution contract, that funding for project-based vouchers are already in that allocation in our annual contribution contract. So there's no additional funding that is required from HUD in order for us to operate the project-based voucher program. One of the other good aspects of the project-based voucher program is that we do not need HUD's permission in order to operate the program as well. The only thing that HUD asks is that we notify the HUD field office, which is located here in New Orleans, of our intent to project-base a portion of our authorized units if we decide to do so. Also, the program must ensure that the activities are consistent with our agency plan, as well as our 5-year plan and our annual updates. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about authorized units under project-based vouchers. So a PHA, Public Housing Agency, may use up to 20% of their vouchers toward project-based vouchers. For Calcasieu Parish, we're authorized for 574 units. So 20% of that would be 114, and we've already committed 70 units for project-based voucher purposes. So that makes 44 available through Calcasieu Parish. For Lake Charles Housing Authority, they are authorized for 2,290 total units. 20% of that is 458 units. And presently, they have 211 project-based voucher allocations, which makes 247 vouchers available. So the total number of vouchers available for any potential projects between Calcasieu Parish and Lake Charles Housing Authority is somewhere in the neighborhood of about 350 project-based vouchers. Next slide. So there are some additional vouchers that can be allocated above the 20%. An additional 10% can also be allocated under our annual contributions contract, providing that they meet the following conditions. First, that the units are specifically made available to house individuals and families who meet the definition of homeless. And of course, we've already talked about here in our community that we have a large homeless problem because of the recent damaging storms and COVID and et cetera. So under McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act of the Section 103, that particular rule, if someone develops a project that includes those individuals, another 10% of the units can be used for project-based vouchers. Also, units specifically made available to house families that are comprised or include veterans or a veteran. Also, units provide supportive housings to persons with disabilities or elderly persons, or the units are located in a census tract with a poverty rate of at least 20% or less. And so in the case of Calcasieu Parish, if this rule is applied, that would make an additional 57 vouchers available on top of the 44 that I've already mentioned. Next slide. One of the other good aspects of the project-based voucher program is the regulations. So while the project-based voucher program has its own set of regulations at 24 CFR Part 983, many of the same regulations that apply to the Housing Choice Voucher Program also apply to the project-based voucher program. So they're pretty much the same, okay? Also at 24 CFR 983.2, it also describes the provisions of Part 98.2 that does not apply to project-based programs. So what's the selection process for project-based vouchers? There's actually two options for a PHA. The first is a internal public competitive process through the Public Housing Authority. And I can stand here and tell you, Mr. Ben Taylor, who is the director of the Lake Charles Housing Authority, is here this morning. And I think he would agree with me, we have no interest in issuing a RFP locally. It is much easier for us to use option two, which is when a development goes through a state process, like the low-income housing tax credit program. We're able to kind of piggyback on that and award project-based vouchers based upon that award. And we would much prefer to do that than to issue a local competitive RFP process. So, PHAs cannot make a commitment of project-based vouchers to any developers unless they have followed the proposal selection requirements described in 24 CFR 983.51, and this does include for tax credit units as well. So, practicality of this project-based voucher program. So, the most recent PBV project that was done here in Calcasieu Parish is La Jolivet apartment community, which is located at 4101 Fifth Avenue here in Lake Charles. This particular development has 264 units, and 66 of those were project-based. 50 were done by the City of Lake Charles, and 16 by the police jury. And this was awarded through the low-income housing tax credit competitive process. And because it was, we were able just to piggyback on that award and award the project-based vouchers locally to this particular development. So let's talk a little bit about eligible housing types for project-based vouchers. So obviously, if there is a competitive process, existing housing units can be considered for PBV, but also newly constructed or rehab housing as well. Project-based assistance for newly constructed existing housing and rehab must be consistent with the goals of deconcentrating poverty and expanding housing and economic opportunities. Subsidy layering reviews are also required for projects involving new construction and rehabilitation so that the projects do not receive excess subsidy. Unfortunately, and many of you who are developers in the room, you know that there is an extensive environmental review process that has to be gone through that's required for all types of project-based voucher projects, and other site selection standards for rehab or newly constructed housing can be found at 24 CFR 983.151. Also, this is not part of in the presentation, but I'll go ahead and mention it. For any particular project, only 25% of the units can be project-based. Okay, so depending on the size of the project, only 25% of those units can receive project-based funding. So what housing types are not eligible for project-based vouchers? Shared housing, units on the grounds of medical, mental facilities or public or private institutions, nursing homes, units designated for occupancy by students, manufactured homes, transitional housing, owner-occupied units, and specific units occupied by people ineligible for participation in the PBV program, as well as units for which construction or rehabilitation has commenced after proposed submission. So those are basically the overview for the PBV program. My understanding is that we are going to take questions, and I think that we have one here. Claire?
Claire, what is meant by shared housing, that first article of the list? No?
No, I don't. Yeah, probably not group homes. Yeah, congregate settings. Yeah.
Talking about like shared rooms?
Yeah, I think like in some cases you may have housing where that may house people with disabilities and they're sharing quarters or what have you. So I think that's what's meant by shared housing. It would not include that. Okay, Matt said that we're going to take questions in a little bit. So at this time, we're going to turn it over now to Mayor Nick Hunter.
Thanks, Derek. All right, if this issue with PowerPoints is the worst thing that happens today, I'm going to be okay with that. I'm going to say, with what we've been through recently, if a PowerPoint snafu is the worst thing we had happen in Lake Charles today, we're going to be all right. So I'm going to go through this, and Nicole, I may just kind of visit and talk, and I don't think we have to correct this situation every 45 seconds. But the city of Lake Charles, even before the recent natural disasters, was very focused on economic development, much of which I'm going to speak about is admittedly focused a little bit more on the retail side. The vast majority of our local tax revenue for the city of Lake Charles does come from sales taxes as opposed to property taxes. However, there could be components of developments that may benefit from some of these aspects, so I will go through. I mentioned some of our objectives in my opening comments a moment ago to really focus on the core of the city, areas that are already developed and under-resourced, ripe for redevelopment, we believe. And so you can see that this commitment was even before the hurricanes, before the recent natural disasters. We want to see more businesses and consumers in the area. We want to take advantage of the I-10 corridor, which is a pipeline for 80,000 vehicles a day through the city of Lake Charles. And quite frankly, if we're being blunt, when you look at our I-10 corridor development for the city of Lake Charles, it is not comparable to other cities that have I-10 development. We want to change that, and we have made some strides to change that. All right. We want to encourage additional investment, economic diversity. We mentioned that. We want to see, it doesn't always have to be multi-million-dollar businesses. It can be small, homegrown businesses that we're trying to spark. We want to create jobs, and we want to retain jobs in the core of our city. We want to create more infrastructure, and we want to create more revenue for infrastructure. The city of Lake Charles was recently successful in getting the first TIF from the state of Louisiana in about 13 years. It's been almost 13 years since the state has awarded a TIF, and we achieved that for our economic development districts. I'll speak more on that in a little bit. And again, focus more on growing the tax base, not necessarily raising tax rates. That's my personal philosophy, and we have been successful in that in recent history, and we want to continue that philosophy for the city. So here's the big picture. The city of Lake Charles, you can see this is mainly our downtown area and our I-10 corridor. And the yellow highlighted areas are the economic development districts that we set up as a city. Now, that's not to say that we can't go outside of these districts and set up a standalone economic development district. But my message to you all is that the city is very familiar with this concept, and we're very comfortable with it. The city council has been supportive. Certainly, I am not a dictator and cannot just say your economic development district is granted. We have a legislative body in the city council, but they have been very supportive of these efforts. Here you see the Lakefront Economic Development District, the I-10 corridor, and Enterprise Boulevard. So when we talk about the lakefront, this is our welcome sign to the rest of the world. We have the only lake in between Houston and Baton Rouge on I-10, and I think it's a pretty beautiful lake. And we also believe that we could utilize it much more than we currently do. Proximity to downtown and the CBD is obvious, and it's a walking distance from the Lake Charles Civic Center into multiple areas of downtown. The Civic Center draws in over 350,000 guests a year. And the city owns over 120 acres of prime lakefront property. Again, my personal philosophical opinion is I want the city to maintain ownership of that property. I think it's our welcome sign to the rest of the world, and we are certainly interested in developing it, but would prefer long-term leases as opposed to the sale of the property. So what are we adding to our toolbox for the Lakefront Economic Development District? We instituted 2 pennies for a sales tax rebate that can go towards the private investor. Now, this is on the city side, not the state side. We also have 6 mills of property tax that can be offered as an incentive for economic development. The state-approved TIF, now this is very important. State-approved TIF, we were very proud of, worked on this for over a year. But those 2 pennies cannot go towards debt service on the private side. That was kind of an agreement that we made with the governor. We respected his wishes, and he was supportive of our efforts. However, those 2 pennies can only go towards public infrastructure, city-owned infrastructure. However, we all know that when you go to make an investment of some of the magnitude that we're talking about, there are oftentimes infrastructure upgrades, streets, sewer, water, drainage, all of those, we can use the state TIF for those purposes. One-time construction fee waivers, we can offer complete waivers of permit fees, water tap fees, sewer tap fees, and the city is investing in our lakefront. I will go ahead and skip towards some images of projects that we are very proud of. And Matt mentioned a moment ago this project, which is Port Wonder. We are actually breaking ground on Port Wonder on June the 30th. So, to Lake Charles, to Southwest Louisiana, it's no longer pie in the sky. It is no longer a dream. It is no longer an idea. We've been talking about it for 15 years. We are breaking ground on this project on June the 30th. The governor is coming to town, and I promised him it's a real project. It's happening. So we're very excited about this project. This project is fully funded. It is a poster child for public-private partnership. Port Wonder is one building with basically 2 tenants, a brand-new state-of-the-art children's museum and also a science and nature center. The Children's Museum will be administered by a local nonprofit that already exists, the Children's Museum, basically destroyed in the aftermath of Hurricane Laura. Their facility was, so they will be moving to this new facility. And the Science and Nature Center will be administered by the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. That project was born out of the BP oil spill settlement. So we're bringing in 2 entities, combining them under one roof, and we believe this is going to be a catalyst for development along the lakefront. And let's be blunt, let's be honest. When you drive over the I-10 bridge and you see that lakefront and you see that abandoned parking garage, it has looked that way for 15 years, and it hasn't been the most inviting view of Lake Charles. We are going to change that. Lake Charles is going to be transformed through this project, and our lakefront will be the benefit of it. The parking garage will be renovated. So this is Port Wonder. And then about a year and a half ago, we issued an RFP because we desperately wanted food and beverage. We believe that food and beverage is key if you want to attract people. So we had this $20+ million Port Wonder project that we had announced. We issued an RFP for property right next to Port Wonder, and we had one respondent, a local family, Avery family, who has some other partners, and Crying Eagle is the name of their business. It's a local brewery and restaurant. Now, to be determined whether the actual name will be Crying Eagle, but they do plan on breaking ground on this project before the end of the year. And so again, we have Port Wonder and Crying Eagle that will be coming up on our lakefront. We are thrilled. So I-10 and Enterprise Boulevard. Again, I mentioned areas that we believe are somewhat under-resourced and ripe for redevelopment. The I-10 corridor is obvious. 80,000 vehicles per day. What can we do more to attract people to spend money here in Lake Charles and get them off of I-10 and spend some money within the city? What are we adding to the toolbox? Within these districts, we have a 1% sales tax rebate that we can offer to private developers. We also have the 6 mills of property tax, same with the construction fee waivers. These lie within opportunity zones, very key. These are federally recognized opportunity zones, and properties within these districts could qualify. Historic tax credits are available. These are within cultural districts. These cultural districts were established before my administration. The Nellie Letcher Cultural District encompasses the entirety of these economic development districts. CDBG funds are available and could be used for these districts depending on the availability, and also focusing probably more on infrastructure related needs. I will also mention that the state TIF is available in these districts as well. So an additional 2 pennies. However, again, that cannot go towards a private developer. It cannot go towards debt service. But if we had to do sewer upgrades, streetscapes, anything that we can argue is public infrastructure, that state TIF can go towards these districts. And we have had successes. I was thrilled and excited when we had the lakefront announcement for Port Wonder and Crying Eagle. I was equally excited when we had a couple announcements along Enterprise Boulevard. We focused on a stretch of Enterprise Boulevard that has some small businesses, certainly some activity, but has been decades since it has seen some of the projects, the size and magnitude that we have achieved in recent history. Acadian Ambulance just relocated its regional headquarters to an abandoned auto supply store on Enterprise Boulevard. It is a poster child, a beautiful story for reutilization of a structure that was once blight on the community, a structure that had remained dormant and stagnant for many years, and Acadian Ambulance went in, refurbished it, and now it is their EMS Academy and also their administrative offices. Also, the City of Lake Charles realizes that we have these cultural districts set up to honor Nellie Lutcher, who is a local music legend here in Lake Charles, but there wasn't really anything tangible within these districts to honor her. So the council supported, and we will be breaking ground on the Nellie Lutcher Memorial Park. This is not a park with slides or swings or seesaws, but it is a park that's going to take basically a sea of broken up concrete next door to our fire station and turn it into a beautiful green space with an area for food trucks and an area where we can have some live entertainment. So Enterprise Boulevard is well on its way. We have several other smaller retail projects that are breaking ground along Enterprise Boulevard very soon. And again, I put this up there to show you that these are opportunity zones, and you can see large swaths of the City of Lake Charles are located within opportunity zones. I'm going to take this moment to point out that much of Chenault International Airport is located within an opportunity zone. I would be thrilled if someone would think that that was worthy of investing in because of this opportunity zone existence for Chenault. So we are excited about that. Again, ladies and gentlemen, the City of Lake Charles is very excited about the future. And I want to throw this out there as a very general statement. We have put together a package of local incentives that we believe are best practices, things that we had gleaned from other communities, and some specific, unique things that we know the City of Lake Charles could achieve. However, if you have seen other communities be inventive, if you have seen other communities use local incentives that we have not considered, and you are interested in development in the City of Lake Charles, bring us a project. Bring us a project and let us speak about it. If you have an idea of how we can incentivize that project to make it more profitable, to make it more feasible, let's sit down and have a conversation. Again, I'm going to go back to comments I made earlier. The number one thing that we're concerned about is quality projects. We want quality projects. If we're going to incentivize something, if I have to go argue to the City Council and the public why we're offering incentives, I've got to say that it's more than just the same old, same old. We've got to say that it's a quality project, a transformative project, and again, quite frankly, quite bluntly, geography will matter. Geography will matter to us because we are focused on the core of the city. We are focused on these areas that we believe are ripe for redevelopment, and we want to see the city grow and prosper from the core out. Thank you so much. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Mayor Hunter. There's an age-old adage that you have to spend money to make money, and at the City of Lake Charles and at Calcasieu Parish, we understand that attracting business or development, keeping them, or getting them to expand operations right here in Southwest Louisiana often involves some types of incentives, and so we are happy that Tarek, Mayor Hunter, have presented a number of those tools in our toolbox. And I do want to tell you, do not fear, although we're having trouble with the slideshows, we are planning to email each of those the full PDF to you following this conference, to those of you that have emailed or registered your email with us. I want to remind you that we've got note cards in the middle of the table, and following the next presentation, we're going to take questions from the audience here in person and also with us on Facebook Live. Thank you, Taylor. And so it's my privilege to introduce at this time Mark Tizano. He's Director of Community Development for the City of Lake Charles, and he's going to talk to us about community development block grants and home funding. Please welcome Mark.
Thank you. Again, my name is Mark Tisano. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Lake Charles. I've been serving in this capacity for just over 6 months. However, this is not my first stint with the city. I actually worked in, it was community development as a part of planning back in 1995. And I met, Terry, he came in, he was 12, well, I came in, I was actually 8.
Oh, wow.
So,
Child labor law.
yeah, so, when, we won't talk about that, but, the typically, the CDBG and home funds, of course, we receive because we are an entitlement community, and that's, communities that, have at least 50,000 people in population. Although there's some cities like Houma and those areas that form a consortium and they receive, funding because of their total population. But, over the years, the CDBG funding, we've used our funding on infrastructure, overlays. We've done drainage. We even have coming up, hopefully within the next few months, we'll be able to start on a park, a linear park that was put into our 2019 application for funding. So we're hoping to get that off the ground soon. But also we use money, our CDBG funds for public services. Those are programs to assist, of course, homelessness. We've had mental health counseling, community gardens, all those types of projects. We've also used some funding for down payment assistance. And normally, on average, what we're looking at on an annual basis, we receive somewhere around $680,000 to $685,000 for that. The home grant, basically it is what it sounds like, it's housing. We can only use those funds for housing, and typically we use that for housing reconstruction, housing rehabilitation. We also are required to give a small portion of those funds to community housing development organizations, and they have done, from time to time, they've done people build homes, new construction, they've done rental, just the whole 9 yards. So these are the types of projects that we have done, but we are open to doing other types of projects. One of the things that we're trying to focus on economic development. And CDBG funds have not been used for economic development over the years, but we are open to that. So, as the mayor mentioned, come and have a sit down, let's talk about it. And if there's something that can be done, we, might be able to pull the trigger on a project. We also, when we look at the annual allocation, may look at it and say, well, it's only 680, whatever. We also have an option to use something that's called a Section 108 loan. And the Section 108 loan would allow us to use whatever our allocation is, which currently, like I mentioned, is like right around 680,000. That would be something like 3.4 million, because it allows you to use 5 times as much as what you're allocated on an annual basis. So that kind of covers what we've been able to do. One thing I do want to touch on is the stimulus money. We're waiting to get some directive, actually get official notice on stimulus money, and I don't want to get too deep into that. We will receive it as an entitlement community, but as of right now, we've only received, or actually been notified about the interim final rule. We don't have the final rule, so before I try to sound like an expert, I'd rather know for sure before I share that with you, but we will be receiving money through the American Rescue Plan. One thing is the mayors, we had conversations with the administration about, really pushing infrastructure. So we're really hoping that, they're gonna make that one of the eligible activities. But I'm gonna get back, like I mentioned before, we don't have the final rule, but I wanna get back to what we're looking to do. CDBG, like I mentioned, we're looking to do economic development. Home, money that we have, if we do anything, and of course it has to be housing, but collectively, what we're looking at as eligible activities under these two funding sources are, you can acquire property, acquisition of real property, infrastructure improvements, construction of housing, down payment assistance projects, and special economic development activities. So that pretty much covers that. Again, what's really important is to understand that these, anytime you're talking about federal funding, there's always some red tape. But the bottom line to this is, in order to take on any type of activity, the activity has to meet one of these three national objectives, which one is to benefit low to moderate income persons, 2, aid in the elimination of slums or blight, and 3, meeting a need having a particular urgency. We call that urgent need.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. We do have just a few questions already from our in-person audience. Lori Mrnovich, if I could ask you to help gather cards on that side of the room, I would be so grateful. This first one is regarding project-based vouchers, and I'm going to direct it toward Tarek unless others would like to weigh in. Will the project-based voucher funding apply towards low-income tax credits, or is it excluded from the credits since it's grant funding all on the government side? Would you like to address that?
So the question is, yes, it does include low-income housing tax credits, and as I mentioned, as part of the selection criteria, if you're awarded at the state level, we can automatically allocate project-based vouchers to that particular project. All you would need to do is just kind of contact our office, and then we'll just need to go through the appropriate procedures in order to make that happen. So whoever had the question, hopefully I answered it.
Stay with me right here.
Okay.
One more regarding project-based vouchers. You had mentioned that those will be awarded to state-funded projects. Will the parish and city determine those priorities for types of projects that they desire, or will we get the project-based vouchers, or will they be first come, first serve?
So I think that the answer here will be that it will be first come, first serve, based upon the total number that's requested. So basically, if someone is awarded at the state level, which I think is our preference, they would have to contact either Calcasieu Parish or the City of Lake Charles or one of the other housing authorities, and it'll be on a first come, first served basis. And then once our allocation has been exhausted, it's exhausted.
All right, I'm going to direct this next question toward Mayor Hunter. Does the city own an inventory of vacant lots and/or homes that it hopes to redevelop, rehabilitate, or sell or auction? And secondly, would the city be willing to work with local nonprofits to redevelop vacant lots or abandoned homes?
It's a great question, and a conversation that we've had at the city even before Hurricane Laura. So I'm going to change the word do we own. We do not own vacant lots. There are multiple adjudicated properties throughout the city, and those are properties that come with them issues that are much greater than things that just the city of Lake Charles can solve. However, we are very passionate about seeing these properties put back into commerce. So absolutely, we would get very creative with developers. All of those incentives that I listed, especially commentary about the waiver of permit fees, but also there are ways that the city of Lake Charles can use state statutory authority to gain control of the property. And I am careful to not use the word clear title because of all of the inherent issues with adjudicated properties. But we can use statutory authority to gain control of the property and then work with a nonprofit to transfer that control to a nonprofit for little to no cost to that nonprofit. I don't want to get too deep into this rabbit hole, but one of the issues with adjudicated properties is it is difficult at times to get certain lending institutions to be willing to accept them as collateral and loan money against these properties. That is one of the issues that we have faced on these properties even before the storm. I can tell you that before Hurricane Laura, the city has an inventory of about 700 to 800 adjudicated properties. Some of those are literal postage stamps where you might have enough room to just put a mailbox and that's it. Some of them are properties large enough to put a home. And so absolutely, we would love to sit down and visit with anyone that is interested in adjudicated properties, both local, for-profit and nonprofits. Again, the adjudicated property issue is much larger than the city of Lake Charles, but we have seen some very innovative things done in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. And our staff is analyzing that to see if we can ask the state for the same authority that was given to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina to expedite those properties being put back into commerce. Thank you, Matt.
One more question, sir. Follow-up question for Mayor Hunter. Are there any qualified opportunity zone funds that currently exist for upcoming projects?
There are two that I know of. One is called GOPHR, G-O-P-H-R, and the other is called North Lake Charles Redevelopment. You can look those up on LED's website, and those do exist for the city of Lake Charles.
Mark, this question is for you. It's regard to the CDBG annual budget. The commenter says that it seems a little low. Is that amount determined only by what people apply for, or is that preset?
The amount is preset. I mentioned, my first stint with the city was in 1995. At that time, we were receiving in excess of $2 million a year. These entitlements have really taken a hit over the years. And one of our issues, is our poverty rate, which is one of the main drivers when in the formula allocation that HUD does. And just put it like this, it's not low enough, it's really just not reported enough during the census, and that really hurts us. So the mayor and I, we've had several meetings where we've discussed this, and there's cities that are smaller than Lake Charles that are receiving more money than Lake Charles because of that. But yes, that's a preset number.
I only have one more question, so if there are others from the audience, we'll take those following this. But the final question I'm going to maybe just pose to each of you if you'd like to comment. Are there property tax abatements available for affordable housing developments? And if not, would the city and/or the parish be open to creating some of those property tax abatements?
I'll handle that. I might be able to speak for all of us. So there are multiple agencies that have millages throughout Calcasieu Parish. The city of Lake Charles millage rate is, depending on where you live, 100 to 120 mills. If you are truly interested in property tax abatements, I'm going to actually encourage you to, where's Calcasieu Parish Trust Authority on here? There we go. 11 o'clock. There we go. 11 o'clock in Memorial 1. The Calcasieu Parish Trust Authority has some very innovative ability to use an abatement process for Calcasieu Parish. And in fact, I think, Tarek, did you mention La Joliet apartment complex in your presentation? That project went through the Calcasieu Parish Trust Authority. And because they were providing affordable housing, which was an issue even before Hurricane Laura, the city and other entities offered our support for that project. So I would encourage anyone that's interested in a full property tax abatement or implementation of an abatement to attend that workshop.
All right. With that, I want to, yes, sir.
Can I ask Mark a question? Mark, on the American Rescue Plan, you're saying you're waiting for final rules to come out on how you can spend the money. Do you think it's clear, though, from the legislation you can use it for water, sewer, internet, and drainage?
that's one of the 4 uses that I've seen so far. Of course, you know, it can change, but so far, yes.
But is the city comfortable going ahead with that spending?
Well, we're comfortable saying it should absolutely be dedicated to infrastructure, and obviously drainage is a very hot topic right now. So if drainage is included in the final allowable expenditures, I would expect that to be in there. I will also say, however, that, you know, drainage is a hot topic, but a couple months ago, we had a pretty massive freeze that knocked out a lot of our water system. And so there are other needs out there. It is dependent on timing, on what people think is the top priority in infrastructure. Certainly drainage is up there, but our water system for the city of Lake Charles could use an upgrade. And so the answer to your question is yes, we believe all of those are allowable expenditures, but we don't necessarily want to put all of our rescue funds just in one basket. It might be good to choose one aspect of infrastructure and maybe spend a larger portion, but I doubt that we will take the entirety of it and dedicate it just to drainage or just to water.
We do have cards. Let's guys. If you don't mind. Sir, we can start with your question right here at the front table.
I was just asking, what's the timeline? Because I know like other states with the American Rescue Plan, they've already received funding, they've already dispersed for like housing, things like that. What's the holdup for Louisiana? Is it on the state level? Is it on the city level?
Well, I know that others have announced how they're spending it. I don't know if they've actually dispersed monies
Or most northern states have already started dispersing money for housing.
for housing.
Yes, sir.
Well, we have not for the city of Lake Charles.
Is it a state level thing?
No. I mean, one part of it is we do have a new council that's about to come on board, and we would like input from the entirety of the new council before we go spend $16 million.
If anyone else has questions, there should be index cards at the center of your tables. Fill one of those out and we'll get right to it. Thanks for your patience. This is going to be the last question. I don't think that we have any further. So the question is related to the funding that we just discussed. What is the allocation for Lake Charles? And he advised on an interim rule. It's a 151-paper document that would be a good read for anyone here in the room. Does anyone want to comment on the allocation currently set for Lake Charles or Cal?
16 million.
It's
for
16
Lake
million.
Charles. I don't know what it is for Calcasieu Parish.
16 million for Calcasieu Parish,
No,
for Lake Charles.
Lake Charles.
So I want to, at this time, thank each of you guys for participating in this first breakout session. We certainly want to thank each of our panelists. If we could give one more round of applause for them.